Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 6 o'clock, so I would like to start this meeting of the special meeting of council to consider the leisure service review. Can I start with apologies, please?
Yes, Chair. We've received apologies tonight from Councillors Bower, Bull, Catt, Chapman, Fitzherbert, Furness, Hobson, Millwood, Monks, Purdy and Tilbrook.
Thank you very much. We have now got the item number 2, which is public participation. We've got 6 speakers making statements on the leisure services review. I shall call you up one by one. If you can sit at the speaker's desk there, the microphone should be on, and you'll have 3 minutes to talk, and I will give you a reminder at 2 minutes, so you know how long you've got left. Mr. Nick Hodgson, representing the Anthony Gell School Foundation.
Does that sound okay? In terms of the time, sound?
Sorry, does
I
that sound okay?
I can hear you.
Of everything that we do. That's really our only purpose, supporting the schools, supporting the pupils, and through them the wider Worksworth community. And those articles approved by the Charity Commission in 2005, just solely about that. Some time ago, we supported the creation of the leisure centre, and I looked back in the papers, and there was a leisure and tourism committee here back in 1995, and I saw then that they understood and agreed with our aims of helping create the leisure centre, but also doing it for school interests. And the foundation contributed a significant amount of money, £11,000, so it was significant in terms of our budgets, to the match funding that went forward to get the Sports Council grant. And of course we also, as landlords, gave the District Council a lease for the land on which to build the centre. The only reason we did all that, to stress again, is because of the school. And it was very good that the Leisure and Tourism Committee recognised all that, and so that's where we came until you started this leisure services review process. And when we considered the matter at our meeting in September, with the advice of our solicitors, we asked to see your consultant, and we actually explained exactly what our position was, and it was great to see our position, our words reflected in the report that you've got in front of you. We will obviously watch this carefully. We will want to consider the assignment of the lease. We will only agree the assignment of the lease to a new operator if it protects the interests of the school. If it doesn't, we won't agree the assignment. And so really, we're just looking at the report you've got tonight. One, I want to stress that we need to ensure that school use is protected. We very much support the Council's desire to maintain and, where possible, improve the local facilities. We support recommendation A, or option A, of the options in that report, recognising the position of the Council is in terms of its budgets or whatever. We welcome the proposed consultation period for key stakeholders, and we would like to play a very active role in helping you develop the tender specification that you'll put out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I've got Mr. Malcolm Kelly, Headmaster of the Anthony Gell School. When you're ready, Mr. Kelly.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, good evening, councillors. My name is Malcolm Kelly. I am the head teacher at Anthony Gell School in Wirksworth, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight regarding the future of the leisure facilities in the Derbyshire Dales. The young people who've been students at Anthony Gell in recent years have had their education strengthened, by the excellent access to outstanding leisure and sports facilities, thanks in part to a joint use agreement that has existed between the school and Derbyshire Dales District Council. This partnership has enabled us to work together to achieve some of our shared aims. We are, after all, two organisations who care about the health and well-being of young people. Thanks to the joint use agreement, students at Anthony Gell have been able to experience and achieve, as well as improve their personal fulfilment. They've strengthened their affiliation with the community, of which we believe they're an integral part. The joint use agreement at Wirksworth means that large numbers of students can use the facilities at off-peak times, and in addition, many Gell students have gone on to become regular users of those leisure facilities across the Dales after leaving full-time education. The joint use agreement also means that operators of the centre benefit from being able to market and use additional facilities which form part of the school. The school reinforced our commitment towards this partnership by recently refurbishing one of these indoor spaces at a cost of £30,000. With such positive outcomes for young people and benefits to both the school and the council, it isn't surprising, therefore, is it, that this partnership has been widely seen as a model of good practice. I was therefore heartened to read under option A in the report that you're considering tonight that there is, and I quote, no intention to restrict or alter the school's access to the sport and leisure facilities on site, or to negatively impact on the financial arrangements currently in place. This, in my opinion, therefore, is essential if we wish to continue, as I'm sure we do, to provide for the young people in these parts of the Dales. I'd like to see the joint use agreement re-signed before any specification goes out to tender. This is in order to provide both parties with the security required to continue to operate effectively in the future. I understand the reasons given for the Council's reluctance to re-sign the agreement, but would hope that the information now provided by the landlord is seen as sufficient to relay any concerns on the Council's part. Therefore, the governors of Anthony Gell School, for whom I speak tonight, would broadly support option A, along as there is assurances that the school will be included in the consultation process, which we believe is scheduled to take place from January to March. The school will also be very happy to work alongside others in preparing the specification before it goes out to tender. Option A, we believe, provides for equitable treatment of Wirksworth and recognises the unique status of the leisure centre with its joint use by Anthony Gell School. We would recommend an integrated approach to managing this centre, the climbing room, the pitches, the pool, and to ensure the facilities are well maintained and improved for increased use by the whole of the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Mr. John Thompson, Chairman of Wirksworth Leisure Centre Sports Group.
Good evening, Chairman and Councillors. My name is John Thompson, and as you say, I chair the Wirksworth Sports Group. I speak about the Leisure Services Review with reference to Wirksworth, where I've lived for most of my life, was a student at Anthony Gell School, and have been involved in development of sports facilities, including the Leisure Centre partnership with the school through its opening in January 2000. Our sports group of volunteers was a catalyst, playing a key role in galvanising local support the Leisure Centre, and we raised £54,000 towards that. The group reformed in spring 2016 because some 30 sports enthusiasts wanted to contribute to this review. We recognise the Council needs to save money given government cuts. FMG consultants have helpfully listed key issues from the Wirksworth point of view, and we trust they will be taken on board. We support option A as the only one that secures parity for each of the 4 towns, and welcome FMG's view that, and I quote, paragraph 318, table 3.1, it has greater scope for access to capital fund to provide investment into facilities and services, noting potential for introducing this in the contract. If approved, we ask for consultation and input to the specification by our group. Future arrangements at Wirksworth must work jointly with the school, the pool and the community, so there is a joined-up approach to the sports hub of the Leisure Centre, 3 floodlit all-weather pitches, playing fields, pool, 4 tennis courts and the health centre. We urge that any new operator would be required to continue operating facilities in the cooperative way your council has established with concessionary pricing schemes, pay and play access and joint user requirements with the school. Our experience of the learner pool makes us particularly worried as the huge amount of expense was incurred by them fixing what the council hadn't done in previous years. We note with concern that a 2-year-old survey at Wirksworth has identified £101,000 of investment needed.
1 minute left.
We therefore are particularly keen that a full independent condition survey is carried out before tendering to provide some indication of what needs doing. We urge the Council to look very carefully at the operating models and the margins of tendering organisations to get the best service and best value for money with a not-for-profit organisation preferred. We welcome the consultant's advice that working through local user groups is the most promising way of ensuring your Council's commitment to community engagement is protected with any new service provider. We trust you will act on this advice and, as we've requested, retain and expand our local leisure centre community group. Our group has a proven record of encouraging and supporting sports development and improvements, and we're keen to continue to work with you to sustain and improve the local sports hub. We seek your support for option A and positive response to our points and support for this approach, please. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chris Whittle, representing Wirksworth Town Council.
Chairman and councillors, my name, as you've already heard, is Chris Whittle, and I speak as a councillor and representative of Wirksworth Town Council. I would also like to thank you for this opportunity to speak about the importance of Wirksworth Leisure Centre within the town and our wider community. The Town Council fully supported the original proposals and fundraising organised in support of the campaign, which led to the development and provision of Wirksworth Leisure Centre, which opened in January 2000. There has always been a strong tradition, as has already been said, of and a commitment to community education in and around Wirksworth. We believe that this has helped to develop a very strong community identity within our town. Sport and leisure make a significant contribution to the town's identity, and central to this is the place of the leisure centre. There is great interest and achievement in a wide range of sport, and this has been encouraged by access to the excellent facilities in and also managed by the leisure centre. I would cite the following examples to illustrate this point. The 3 all-weather floodlit pitches at Anthony Gell School have had over 370,000 users to date. The leisure centre itself, including the climbing wall, acting as a hub for the wider community, has had well over 1 million users since it opened. In all sports, participation has significantly increased and standards have risen. The increase in sporting participation has also had a significant economic impact within the community. Wider sporting participation has also added to community life and healthy opportunities for enjoyment. Residents of all ages and with diverse interests and motivation significantly benefit from access to our leisure centre. We firmly believe that Wirksworth Leisure Centre is central to the life of our community and the activity of the sports clubs. The working relationship between Anthony Gell School and the leisure centre make a vital contribution to the social life of our town, to the health and well-being of our community, and to the economic prosperity of our area.
1 minute left.
It is vital that what opportunities for sport and recreation are maintained and even enhanced. A point made to your consultants, KKP, when they recently discussed sport and leisure provision with the Town Council as part of gathering evidence for the local plan and in the lead-up to producing a leisure strategy. The Town Council would like to record the fact that within the next decade, Wirksworth will undergo an unprecedented expansion in house building. There are already plans in various stages of development which would add more than 300 houses, and we therefore feel that it would not be unreasonable to use by extrapolation the view that there will be 500 houses built over the next 10 years. There will clearly be a need to consider the impact that this will have on all aspects of community life, but in our view it is clear that the place of the Wirksworth Leisure Centre will only increase in importance in the next decade. In the view of the Town Council, we would support option A as a preferred choice. By contrast, there is concern that options B and C would potentially lead to Wirksworth and Bakewell becoming, in effect, poor relations in the district. With option A, not only does the district council make significant savings.
Thank you. Sorry, you've had a bit more than 3 minutes. I was trying to be generous as I could, as I have been with everyone. Thank you. Mr. Alan Morrison, representing, again, Wirksworth Leisure Centre Users Group.
Thank you, Chairman and Councillors, for allowing us this opportunity to speak. I represent the users of the Leisure Centre on the Wirksworth Sports Group. As a regular user of the gym in the Wirksworth Leisure Centre, I would like to express my grave concern for its future. It's a vital community facility which is now under threat from the Council's cost-saving review. I accept that the Council has to make cuts in its provision of public services across the district, and I know that it's not just the Wirksworth Leisure Centre that is being considered in this review. My wife and I are both in our late 60s and use the gym for an hour 3 times a week in an effort to keep fit and healthy and keep at bay some of the ailments which afflict older people. Many of the people who use the gym along with us are in the same age group, and some are a good bit older. Several have been referred for regular exercise by the nearby Hannisbrook Medical Centre. Our GPs advocate exercise as being good for everyone and also beneficial in managing and even treating certain ailments such as diabetes and lung and heart conditions. From our experience, the gym also has a considerable social value for some people who might otherwise become more lonely and isolated. I am aware too that the Council's consultants have looked at a number of options which could include outsourcing the running of all or some of the leisure centres to private operators, but might also include a community asset transfer to a local community group. The former would undoubtedly result in increases in entrance fees and subscriptions, which could make it too expensive for some people. Transfer of the running and maintenance to a community group might seem like an easy option for the Council, but no one should be in any doubt that running a centre like this is not for volunteers. It needs trained and qualified full-time staff who have to be paid a professional wage. Another crucial aspect of the Wirksworth Leisure Centre, which has already been alluded to, is its close links with the Anthony Gell Secondary School. The Leisure Centre is physically linked to the school. It stands on land that belongs to the Gell Foundation and provides valuable sporting facilities, indoor and outdoors, for the students of the school as well as the public. Currently, a service agreement exists between the school and the Council, which ensures continued availability of the sports facilities for the students. Despite having built up a habit over 15 years, it is quite likely that should the Leisure Centre close, we and others like us who walk to the gym would not make the effort or take the time to travel to Ashbourne or Matlock on such a regular and frequent basis. I appeal to the Council, therefore, to make every effort to find a solution which ensures the level of service provided by the Leisure Centre is maintained for the community of Wirksworth and the surrounding area, and that in any arrangement to outsource the running of the centre, the operators are obliged to keep entrance charges and subscriptions affordable. By any reckoning, the town is due to be expanded greatly in years to come, and the need for a facility as good as Wirksworth Leisure Centre will be needed even more than it is now. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bob Davies, Wirksworth Face Wall user.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm a user of the Wirksworth climbing wall frequently and a long-time resident of Wirksworth. My name's actually Dr. Bob Davies, actually. The climbing wall at Wirksworth is unique in the Derbyshire Dales District Council area. Even the new Mount Cook Centre in Wirksworth has no indoor climbing wall facilities, and they rely on the Leisure Centre for the wet weather facilities. Its naturally textured bouldering wall is particularly valuable. Derbyshire Dales and High Peak areas are the home of British rock climbing and attract climbers from throughout Europe. Access to an indoor climbing wall, given the British climate, is a vital resource keeping climbers in peak condition and therefore minimising accidents. I often meet climbers from out of the area who have resorted to the wall when rain has stopped playing outside. The walls wall extensive range of classes, particularly for children, are well subscribed and have helped children increase their sports participation, confidence, and contribute to their health and well-being in a safe and controlled environment, as I know from experience of my own grandchildren. The British Mountaineering Council's John McAfee has met with Malcolm Kelly of Hillpover and the wall manager Mark Evans, and they have spoken about the popularity of the wall. Dave Turnbull of the BMC has informed the sports group that he could offer support in securing funding from the sports councils for the wall. What the council needs to research is if option A leads to a commercial operator taking over the running of the facilities, that this funding stream would still be available. It was thanks to the Anthony Gell Foundation, local people, Worksworth Town Council and District Councils that £54,000 was raised to build the leisure centre and allowed another £900,000 to be leveraged for the project. We feel an ownership for this facility as we did for the extra care facilities of Waltham House, similarly outsourced to a managing group, Housing 21. Given that there are problems sometimes with that, we must make sure that if option A does go to a commercial operator, there are tight conditions imposed on the operators, otherwise there will be a risk of a betrayal of the people who work with and a loss of control of facilities they raise money for and have a stake in. Example of tightening up management agreement, I might mention the fees. The council has been raising the fees annually in line with inflation, which has resulted in numbers of users dropping. Last year there was a reforming of that so that the fees are in line with facilities in Sheffield, Nottingham and Derby. The significant increase in usage of the wall is to be followed and is to be applauded, and has helped the council's duty to help residents increase their health by accessing sports. Questions I'd like answered are: how will the fees be set if someone other than DDDC run the centre? Will there be a cap on fees? Will the price be kept at commercially attractive rates in line with other walls? Will there be concessionary rates available to keep the facilities attractive for the people of different ages and financial circumstances? And there should be no question over the future of the Worksworth climbing wall and the leisure centre, apart from how to expand them. With the trail, the wall, Carsington Reservoir and the beauty and challenges of local landscape, Worksworth is a hub for outdoor activities, providing opportunities and jobs for local people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Davis.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sorry to have cut you short, but we need to progress with the agenda. Any councillors got any interest to declare? I don't think we've had any. Councillor Radcliffe?
I'm also a county councillor, and certainly the county council, Derbyshire County Council, provided money towards the facilities and the establishment of particularly the wall at one time. So I do wish to note that, and previously I've recorded an interest because Derbyshire County Council's legal services have provided support to the Anthony Gell School, and I declared that I wouldn't take any decision there and wanted to be here representing as a district council rather than a county council.
Thank you very much. We don't perceive there's a conflict there. Sorry.
Yeah, there's no conflict of interest there, but we can record it as a personal interest if you wish.
No more conflicts of interest? Okay, we now move on to the substantive point, which is the Leisure View Services final report. Ashley Watts, Head of Community Development, is going to give a short presentation to get everyone up to date as to the contents of the report. Then we'll move on to any questions and debate following that.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the report, I've provided a presentation focusing on the key points. I appreciate that the main document produced by FMG is quite a lot to digest. So just to provide a little bit of context, and for those of you were here last Thursday for Karen's presentation, you'll be familiar with the next few slides. But the financial position for the council is that we have had, or will see, a 56% reduction in the grant between 2012-13 to 2019-20, which equates to approximately £2 million. And you'll be familiar with this slide, which is a medium-term financial plan, and you can see by 2021 the council has to find approximately £1.2 million. Now, there are a number of different mechanisms that we're looking at as an organisation to achieve that, but you'll see from the figures presented there, the largest one is through means of service reviews, which is what this is in terms of the leisure service. Now, the leisure service review has been ongoing now for just over 2 years, and the reason for that is mainly because it's such a large service area and a complex service in terms of the partnerships involved in that, but also the impact that it could have on the organisation as a whole. So we started off with what we refer to as phase 1, which was back when Peter Foley was here as a director, and he led on that review, and we looked at in-house operational efficiency, so how we were operating the service, were there things that we could tweak to either trim a little bit of fat off the budget, or things that we could do to improve the revenue that was coming into the service area. Those findings were reported back to the Community Committee in July 2004 and identified around £111,000 of savings per annum. Those changes came into effect from March 2015, at which point we moved into the second phase of the review, and we, through a tendering process, FMG Consulting, who provided the main report, were appointed to provide a business options appraisal on the future management arrangements of the leisure service. So this was to consider alternative management models that were out there in the market. What happened there was that was returned in October 2015, and as part of that, 5 options were presented to members, and you will see from 3.14 of the report what those options were. They were narrowed down to 2 options, which essentially were to outsource the service or to retain Ark and Ashbourne Leisure Centre and to work with community groups to see if it was possible for community asset transfers. Our corporate leadership team had a discussion after taking time to digest the report in November, and the last point on there is here this evening. Now, you will have seen through the report there are 3 main options. Option A is quite clearly outsourcing the management of the leisure centres to a specialist leisure management operator. And when we say that, I'd like to be clear, we're not talking a David Lloyd or a Sam Jones kind of operator. We're talking somebody that works specifically in a market that operates local authority or manages local authority leisure centres and services. Also within option A is the recommendation to retain the sports development function in-house. Option B is to retain Ark and Ashbourne, as said earlier, and work with the community on considering the feasibility of asset transfers for Bakewell Swimming Pool and Works with Leisure Centre, and again retaining the sports development function. Option C is a hybrid of both, where the Ark and Ashbourne Leisure Centre would be outsourced to a specialist leisure management operator, and again working with the community for the transfer of Bakewell and Works with Leisure Centre, and again retaining the sports development function. You can see from the figures above, if you look at the current costs, the current net cost of operating those facilities is approximately £740,000 to the authority. The savings identified below for each option, moving up to a year 5 projection, it is worth noting that These figures have been determined through what we refer to as soft market testing. So our consultants have been out to the market via a questionnaire and asked what savings they feel they will be able to provide. There was a range of figures submitted, and the consultants have confirmed that these are prudent estimates and are not exact, and possible further savings could be made, certainly in with regard to option A. Moving on to the recommendations within the report, or the recommendation for option A, I've outlined the thinking behind this recommendation. And option A, as you can see from the previous slide, offers the greatest saving. It will see improved service delivery across all sites. From the visits that myself and Peter Foley went to, we visited 16 different operators over about an 8-month period, and we met with Chief Executive of Trust, we met with staff, we met with managers on site, and we spoke with the local authorities who had been involved in transfer of services. And one thing that was quite clear was that there had been a greater investment in the development of staff, and that was quite pleasing to see, because if I'm going to be entirely honest, we went there with concerns of how transfer of services could affect staff, not just in terms of their contracts, but also for their career progression and futures. So it was quite pleasing to see. Option A, quite simply, does offer a reduced risk and liability to the council. And one or two comments from members of the public earlier could be reassured that the control or how the service operated is determined by a clear specification. That being said, it's really important that we do get a clear and detailed specification drawn up in the first instance, and I do make reference to that and a recommendation within the report that a working group is put together and consultation takes place to define what that specification looks like. Option B was ruled out mainly because of the points raised there, and there are fluctuations that would still remain as with the council as a liability in terms of the service the sites that were retained. So any fluctuations in utility costs and the like would have a knock-on effect on the finances of the authority. The fragmentation of services is a concern, especially under B and C, mainly C, because if you're working, or you've got, there was a reference to poor relations, if you have facilities that are operated independently by a community group, they may not, and are certainly unlikely to have the level of investment to put into those facilities that a private operator would. So we do feel that there would be a fragmentation. Also, we have members who cross-utilise sites, so you may have somebody who's using the climbing wall at Worksworth, for example, but will then travel to Arc to use the swimming pool. That service is likely to be broken down, so we think that's a reduced offer to the end user. B also offers the least amount of savings when you compare it to the others, as you've seen on the previous slide, and there's concerns over sustainability, and there has been some good success stories in terms of transfer of assets, but assets where the operating costs are as high as they are with these leisure centres and leisure centres in general, there is a question mark over whether that would be sustainable in the longer term. Also, although there is social capital out there and interest in supporting some kind of arrangement for option B, there is absolutely no guarantee that this is achievable. Option C, very similar to above. Again, biggest concern is fragmentation of service. It's around £200,000 less per annum in terms of savings when you compare it to those offered by option A. And again, there's no guarantee that these transfers are achievable. The recommendation made is that option A is approved by members this evening, and that is to outsource the leisure centres as a whole to a specialist leisure operator. The second one is that the sports development function remains in-house and continues to work on the initiatives and the projects out in rural communities and supporting those who probably cannot get access to our leisure centres. And the third one, as I stated earlier, is that a period of consultation takes place with key stakeholders to define a specification that sits with the council's values and what's important to our partners to maintain the good work that we've already achieved and to build on that. The contract should be advertised no later than the 31st of May next year, and then the findings are reported back the following year for a final decision to members. Now, I would like to just highlight the reason it takes so long is the size or the value of the contract would mean that we would be governed by European procurement regulations. So the time involved in that is much greater than if it was of less value. And the sixth recommendation is that the Community and Environment Committee be delegated authority to determine the final specification. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Councillor Snack.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, will the council ensure that if the management of the centres are transferred, the buildings, facilities and equipment will all be subject to independent inspection to ensure that they all are in appropriate condition for the full use of prior to transfer? So, independent assessment. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, yes, Councillor Slack, an assessment of the facilities will take place. It will probably take place by both the council and also by the contractor, as the facilities and equipment have to be returned in a condition that is either equal or better to those received.
Thank you.
Councillor Radcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A number of questions, if I may, but I just wanted to make it clear to the members of the public who have come along this evening that we have had a very full briefing, a really excellent briefing, can I add, by the consultant of FMG who drew up this report, very ably assisted, I have to say, by Ashley here, our Leisure Services Officer, who answered a good number of questions, very detailed questions raised by councillors here and myself before this meeting. But I'd still like to ask one or two others, if I may. But just a very quick one to begin. On your timetable there, I have some reservation about the order, particularly as we get towards the end there. I would have expected the Community Committee to be ratifying a final specification that then went to the full council for its final decision, not the other way around.
Councillor Ratcliffe, I'm informed it can go back for rubber stamping.
Thank you. Just to pick up something mentioned in the question by my colleague here, and just a little preface. I did ask the consultant about the figures that he's put forward for the financial cost to implement option A, that amounted to about 75k. 25k of that was about condition surveying. I am assuming that within the full implementation cost, there will be an additional amount that would go to the payment of professional help that no doubt we will require to draw up the specification, i.e. further assistance from consultants. So I would have expected a little bit more than a basic 75k. However, just following on from that, on page 9 of your report, Ashley, paragraph 3.6, the point is mentioned that the council will retain some of the liability associated to the repair and maintenance of the facilities, something that is only just coming home to me in the sense that we will have ongoing liabilities. Can I assume that within the condition survey that we will be carrying out over all 4 health centres, these liabilities will be revealed and made known to us, as it were, before the contract is placed, so that we know what our future financial outlays may be over the life of that contract?
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back to your first point, Councillor Ratcliffe, the condition surveys and the cost of the implementation costs. The council already has a number or works included in its capital programme that need to be done that have already been identified as part of the current condition surveys report. The 75,000 doesn't include any works identified by a new condition report, so we'd have to look at that when we receive it. The £25,000, there will be consultation work involved in that, and that money is set aside to help determine and finalise the specification and progress it right through to implementation. On your point regarding liability, that's very much determined by the specification, and I think this is a really important point that members need to be mindful of, because depending on how we draw up that specification in terms of level of liability, there are options, and I suppose it's a sliding scale if you wish, because you could have a situation where you pass on the majority of liability to the contractor, but we must accept that by doing that we will receive or a greater management fee, so less of a saving. However, the council could retain the lion's share of the liability and receive more in terms of saving. So I think when we're drawing up the specification, we need to have an understanding of that as a working group and feel from members where we want to sit on that sliding scale.
Thank you. I have another question, if I may, but what's already emerging just over the brief period of these questions and prior to this is the essential importance of this specification, to see that it is watertight and contains everything that we wish to see regarding the outcome of the future of these health centres of ours. One thing that strikes me, and I mentioned it before in our previous get-together, how important it is to have very full involvement in the consultation process over the specification. I'm very minded that there are representatives here this evening from user groups, from our what I call the service clients here, not just the commercial stakeholders, if you like. Though again, I know that, for instance, at the Arc we have a commercial franchise there. But can you assure me that in drawing up the tender specification, all interested parties, particularly the people who use our centres, will have some involvement?
In short, if I may, Chair, the answer is yes, Councillor Ratcliffe. Yes, we will be, when we talk about stakeholders, we're not just talking about those that we have commercial relationships with, but also via user groups and users, and obviously representatives that have spoken this evening as well, but across all 4 sites.
Councillor Sue Burford.
Thank you. Could I just, well, three questions really. The first one is to do with the actual quality of what we end up with, basically, because I think for the public, what they want really is an efficient service that's well managed with a quality product at an affordable price. And I just wonder how as a council are we going to, through this specification, we're going to assure that that's what they will end up with. That's the first question. The second one is to do with not-for-profit operators. Now, as far as I understand it, not every one of the 6 operators that have given some kind of response to us, they're not all not-for-profit. Would it be acceptable, in fact, would it be sensible to suggest that the tenders actually only went out to these non-for-profit operators? The third question actually is a very obvious one actually, and I think somebody asked that at the earlier meeting, which is really why isn't this council at the moment running its centres at least to be able to break even? Now I know that was answered before, but I think the public would be interested to hear that answer.
Thank you, Chair. Your first point regarding assurance on and quality of service, Councillor Burfoot, I think what we need to bear in mind and keep in mind that this is a discretionary service, and any operator that comes in needs to be operating with the customer in mind. It's an aggressive market. People aren't just going to walk through the doors. It's got to be well marketed. It's got to be a good customer experience, and they will focus on achieving that, and there'll be a lot more investment made available to achieve it than we have access to. They're very commercially orientated. There are a number of the bigger players who are very successful in the market, and the customer experience is key to their success. They are about the bottom line, and I'm just touching on your point regarding fees and charges. It's not necessarily about increasing charges, and I appreciate there's generally some anxiety around a private operator coming in and just increasing fees. That's not always the case. It's about increasing numbers to generate revenue as well, and they need to do that to achieve their financial objectives. Moving on to your point regarding not-for-profit distributing organisations and whether we could just offer tenders to those people, my understanding is that we're not able to do that. But again, I think we need to be clear through the working group whether that is an appropriate stance for us, rather than me giving an answer on that as a definite this evening. And on to your final point as to why we can't achieve break even in terms of finances. Again, it goes back to the point that these are specialist operators within the market. They're very much the professionals in this area. They will get economies of scale. They'll be able to bring in specialisms that we can't access, and in addition to that, many of these operators do have a charitable status or are able to access tax exemptions and rate relief that we can't get. And when you look at the cost of those, that certainly narrows the gap in terms of the surplus that the council pays and the relief that they will get.
Thank you very much. Could we have Councillor Swindell, please?
My microphone's not working, Chair, so I'll try to be as loud as I can. First of all, thank you, Councillor Stevens. But thank you to Ash and his team for all the work they've done on this. It feels like we've been going through it for a long time. It must feel like an even longer time to them going through it all. And thanks for the briefing as well prior to the council meeting, which answered a lot of my questions, and Councillor Burfoot touched on them as well. But I want to go back for some reassurance on this issue of the fees and charges. And I believe one of the speakers raised this as well. In the past, we've either benchmarked with other service providers, other local authorities, or we've got in line with inflation. And when we sort of talk about a commercial operator coming in, there is the possibility that fees and charges will go up because they have to make those savings, and there is a worry amongst people that I've spoken to that if the service improves so much, they will think that they have an automatic right to charge a lot more. And there are people across the Derbyshire Dales, elderly people, disabled people, and just general residents who use this to keep fit and keep healthy, which is one of our priorities and authority. And what I'm concerned of is if we don't have something put in the contract or an input over the years that the commercial operator is in place, that we may see what I would class as ordinary people priced out of using our services, which I really wouldn't like to see. Can you provide any reassurance on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. With regards to setting fees and charges, Councillor Swindle, there are certain aspects that, as part of drawing up the specification, as a working group, we may wish to consider, and that could be things like protecting the concessionary rate and the concessionary structure that we currently have in place. It may include things like protecting the amount of time available to sports clubs or education for school swimming lessons. There are a number of aspects that I think we need to consider, and we've also got to bear in mind that the council has a commitment to its health and well-being strategy, and leisure services and leisure centres fit firmly within that. So whilst we're drawing up a specification, these are going to be firmly on a radar. We're not going to lose sight of that. We could find ourselves in a position where in the specification we are suggesting no more than an X% increase in fees and charges. But again, you know, we've got to find that balance of giving the contractor the flexibility to achieve the savings which we benefit from, and to be frank, it's not in anybody's interest to outprice people from attending the leisure centres.
Thank you, Councillor Botham.
Thank you. We've heard today about the interest from stakeholders and from user groups, but there is another sector of people that I'm interested in hearing about, and that's the staff. Could you give me a number, please, of the staff that will be transferred by TUPE, including any backroom staff, and how they might be affected by being transferred?
Sorry, could you just repeat your first question again, Councillor Bowen?
Yeah,
sorry.
can you give me a number of staff that are going to be transferred by TUPE, including any ripple effect of backroom staff, if you can?
There's a difficulty with the back office staff, because as it stands, an amount has been identified, but as a corporate leadership team, I think we need to understand how that is affected, and I think there's work still to be done to understand what time and where is allocated to leisure services. So I think there's still some work to do. I think we've got a ballpark figure as to the back office savings that could be realised, but how they are implemented and to what effect, I think it's too early to say. With regard to transfer of staff, we don't operate, not everybody in the leisure centres is a full-time or contracted employee as such. We have what we refer to as casual employees, so these are people who are as and when required, and that suits both needs. These could be employees who are at college and can only work Saturdays or Sundays, or can only work a few hours in a week. So if I was to say on average it's about 130 employees within the leisure service, depending on the time of year, because it is very much demand led. So over the summer period that number could increase towards 150, but some staff are literally brought in on a seasonal basis, so I can't give you an exact figure because it changes quite often.
Councillor Martin Burford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a number of my questions have been answered already, but going off from what Councillor Botham asked, I think I'm particularly concerned about central support staff here at the Town Hall who have involvement now in leisure centres work. And the answer at the earlier briefing wasn't entirely satisfactory, so I want to make sure that officers do the management team does consider very seriously the impact on town hall-based staff, support staff, if option A is proceeded with. That's one question, and I think that needs to be obviously borne in mind before a final decision is made as well. As Sue and I represent the site of the Ark here in Matlock, and live very close, in fact adjacent to the site, we obviously get a lot of complaints from residents about anything that's happening, and users tend to come to us if they know us in that area as well. But I did ask the question earlier, and I think it's something else that needs to be considered very carefully. We seem to be talking about the bricks and mortar in terms of transfer to a private operator if option A is proceeded with. But I think we need to consider the other parts of all the site, or particularly 3 of the 4 sites that Ashbourne, Worksworth and Matlock, the Ark site. There's an awful lot of space around those centres, which is currently obviously managed by the District Council. I think we need to know, before we have a final decision on this potential contract, just whose responsibility, whose liability will be maintenance and care of the car parks and the surrounds to the buildings and the landscaping, etc. In the future, where we can now obviously go direct to a council officer to get resolved. In fact, funny enough, I've found some old PowerPoint presentation from an officer, a former officer of the District Council to Matlock Town Council, of which I was a member many years ago, probably about 10 or 11 years ago, this presentation, and involved quite a lot of suggestions of possible diversification if, well, this was obviously with the council developing the centre, and consultants were taken on at that time, and they were recommending all sorts of things like toboggan runs, and there was a mugger that was supposed to be provided, in fact was never provided, climbing walls, which have been mentioned by a speaker from Worksworth earlier, of course. So what would the council's attitude be to a private operator under option A proposing diversification of this sort, in terms of obviously subject to planning, on the surrounds to the probably Ashbourne and Matlock mainly, providing other facilities to obviously boost their income, but obviously increase the provision of facilities for the residents as well.
I'll touch on your second point first, if I may, Councillor Burfoot. As it stands, our initial thoughts are literally within the facilities, not the surrounding car parks, or land around that. That's not to say that it would be ruled out. I think it's something that we need to consider as part of the specification. We also need to be mindful that we do have staff across the organisation who are responsible for maintaining that land. So taking that away could have an effect in that area as well. So I think there's some thought that needs to be put into that, and I don't feel that that's my place to make a decision on that. In terms of other facilities, I think that's something that would have to come back here to members. If there was going to be a change of the facility, we'd also need to look at the terms of the lease of certain facilities. Bakewell itself and Worksworth is not on District Council land. There could be planning implications. So I think, again, that's quite a broad question, and certainly not one that we can answer this evening, and it would have to come back for further discussion. Your first point regarding assurances for back office staff, looking at the medium-term financial plan, we've got £1.2 million to save. It's a significant amount of money for an organisation this size, so I think it would be inappropriate and not right to say that we won't and cannot give any guarantee, we can't give guarantees that staff will be protected. I think the magnitude of those savings that we need to find mean that we will have to consider all our options.
Councillor Irene Rafferty.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of my first question, really goes back to a point made by one of the speakers. I think it was, and I wondered if the officer would like to comment on the request that came regarding the agreement. Should option A go through by members, would the council agree to sign the agreement with Worksworth and the school before the tender and of course the specification goes out. So that's my first question. The other one is in terms of, will you ensure that the equivalent financial support is available to all 4 centres in future? That's linked with another question, if you would say, is about the comment that there's 100,000 pounds identified in terms of work needed within the works worth of survey. So that would need these extra costings. I'd like a little bit more information about that. There was also a request that the swimming pool be included within that context of option A, in terms of the possibility of that having a management link with the swimming pool trust, which would be absolutely wonderful if that could be done. However, in fairness, I did ask that question at the meeting before, and I do feel that because it was brought up in public, I know I have the answer, but I have to have that as well. So, and the last one, Chair, is about the working group. What is the makeup of the working group? Have we got to draw up the specification? Thank you. Oh, and then the other one was linking fees and charges with and the specification about car parking charges. And have we taken into consideration that if we give car parking spaces for the management of the leisure services, do we then lose that income, and how's that, how that aspect is dealt with? So I don't want an answer about the car parking and the fees, but I do want us to flag out that there are lots of aspects there, particularly in terms of rural areas where it's always difficult to park in these honeypots of our towns. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Taking your first point, Councillor Ratcliffe, regarding the joint use agreement. In short, the answer is yes. We will be working to put a joint use agreement in place. What I would say is that we need to have an agreement that is considered suitable for both parties, and we'll do that through negotiation. But I do want to stress, and have stressed to colleagues in the past, that that is a relationship that we want to protect, irrelevant of what decision members make this evening. That's an arrangement and a relationship that has been built on over a number of years, and we want to see that continue, and that will form part of a specification. With regards to the work that is highlighted for Worksworth Leisure Centre, that, as I said earlier, is part of the capital programme that's already been approved by members, so that work is due to take place. I don't have that in front of me, so I can't give you the timescales involved, but it is included and will take place. The final point regarding, your point regarding the learner pool, as it stands, that is not a district council asset. The review that has been undertaken has looked at the district council's leisure centres. The comment that came back from the consultant in the briefing prior to this meeting was that often, or it is possible, that a private operator may wish to work in partnership and see how the working arrangements could work, but as it stands, this review does not include the learner pool. And your last question was your working group, and I'll be looking at colleagues at the CLT, one in particular sat at the side of me. In terms of finance, I think we need to sit and think about the membership of that and who's appropriate to sit on that working group, but that will all be reported back to members.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got 3 councillors down who've want to ask questions, I believe. Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, quick one. The primary concern I've had from some of my electors is the protection of services like, for example, Healthy Hearts at Ashbourne, and whether. So my question was whether the sports development team could take that on as well to protect the more therapeutic, healthy district type services that the leisure centres carry out.
If I may, Chair, in terms of protection of services such as the Healthy Hearts, again that will be part of the specification. We'll be looking at what aspects we wish or which are important to us, which we'd like the contractor to carry out and continue to work with, and I would imagine Healthy Hearts will certainly be one of those. In terms of the sports development function, it very much, the workload currently is often determined by external funding, and we are looking at different ways of working with the sports development, but the Healthy Hearts Club currently is based within the leisure centre. The sports development team generally are not. They're out in rural communities and supporting those who cannot access the leisure centres and particular services.
Councillor Fawley?
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say I really appreciate this report and the amount of work that's gone into it. It's fabulous. In paragraph 218 of the report, we have a paragraph which says that we shouldn't just be looking at performance against benchmarks, but we should be considering other options such as the operational philosophy. What I want to ask is, if it's a company or a business that's running something, they're obviously going to be veering towards activities that are going to bring them in quite a lot of money. They want to break even, really, they want to make a profit. So how can we be assured that activities which members of the public really appreciate but are not money spinners will be retained?
If I may, Chair, just to go back to, it's a similar point really to the one discussed with Councillor Swindle, that it's in the operator's interest to get as many people through the doors as possible, and not just going to focus on those people who can afford services. Many of the companies now have very much moved away, and have done for a number of years, of that traditional private sector approach of providing for those that can afford it. There's certainly an ethos of supporting people in terms of health and well-being benefits, and if members have used, hopefully you haven't, but if you've used other facilities outside of the Dales, you will certainly see that there is a great push towards supporting people into activity.
Could I come back on that, please? So I wasn't really concentrating on the fee aspect, but on the fact that if an activity is not bringing in, say, only get 8 people a week coming to do something, and it's not well supported by the public, but it's essential for just a few people, would that be retained?
It very much goes back to the specification, Councillor Pauly. I think we need to identify which activities and sessions are important to us as a council that we would like to see retained. What I would say is that even now there are sessions and classes where if there are low numbers, we have to consider its viability. We're no longer in a position where we can just afford to operate classes at a loss, and I wouldn't expect a private operator to do so unless they were clearly directed to do that within that specification.
Thank you, Chair. My question, Ash, is on tendering. If we was to choose a not-for-profit organisation or company when we come to the tender, if we agree option 89, of course, would I be true in saying that a non-for-profit company organisation would be in a better position to get grants than a private company, and therefore, if so, it would be the benefit of our community to go for a non-profit making organisation?
Just 2 points there, Councillor Slack. This is not my area of expertise in terms of grant funding, but my understanding is that a not-for-profit organisation could be looked upon more favourably than a purely commercial enterprise. And could you just repeat your second part of your question?
The second part of the question would be that therefore it would be in the community's interest to
sorry.
a not-for-profit organisation.
Again, it'll be difficult for us just to say that we want an NPDO over a commercial enterprise. I don't think we're allowed to state that that's just what we want.
But it's a fact which we must bear in mind, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've asked all the questions that... Sorry, sorry, you may not. Sorry, it's public participation finished earlier. So I'm sorry, it's a discussion amongst the councillors and the requirement to make a decision. Sorry, thank you. Councillor Rose.
Well, Chairman, I think we all know that this is probably one of the most important decisions that we have needed to make for some time. I won't liken it to the refuse contract in case that upsets Councillor Swindle, but it certainly has parallels, because this is an issue which affects the whole of the district, not just one particular part. From the length and breadth of Derbyshire Dales, just as the refuse collection service did when that was put out some many years ago now. But the two services are totally different. One, of course, was a service we had to provide, and this is, of course, a discretionary service which we don't have to provide. And I'd like to think that over the years we've probably not blown our own trumpet enough about the excellence of the service we have provided. And I'm sure all of us are grateful to Ash and his predecessors, a few of them, and the whole staff that have been involved in the development of our leisure services over many years. When you think what we started with back at reorganisation were some sort of, dare I say it, some properties which weren't in the best condition then, and which we have invested in heavily. And of course, not only has the new centre at Worksworth been mentioned, which was opened in 2000, but of course the pride and joy of the district is probably the Ark, and between times we've provided the Bakewell...
sorry, excuse me, sir. Can you remove that piece of paper?
In the meantime, we provided the Bakewell pool and considerably improved the Ashbourne pool, despite attempts by others to burn it down on one particular occasion. So I think our record in leisure services has been an excellent one which we can be justifiably proud of. So this is why this is such a fundamental decision, because it might break some of our hearts to feel that we're parting with a great friend. But I don't think in adopting option A, which is I'm going to move shortly, we are parting with a lost friend. We're entering into an arrangement with a not-for-profit making company. I would assume will be the most likely successful tenderer in due course, who will have to provide that service to an agreed specification. And the specification, and Councillor Mike Ratcliffe put his fingers on this as usual, accurately, it's absolutely vital we get that specification right, and it's absolutely vital to our friends at the back. So I'd like to assure them that I'm sure the council will do all it can to make sure that our aims and aspirations, which we've built up over so many years, can be enshrined. Having said that, it is a discretionary service, and I think if we're being honest with each other and with the public, if we did not make a decision like this, and we all know the presentation that Karen made last week, and Ash has rightly reminded us of, we would have to have made some pretty horrendous decisions, which might have involved the closure of leisure centres or might have involved shutting down of some other service. So, let's delude ourselves that that isn't there in the background. So in a sense, accepting the recommendation that's been made tonight is an easier option than facing what might be the reality if we don't. And that, to my mind, is absolutely clear that option A speaks for itself. I don't think any of the other options work, and it is actually nice to have almost a unanimous voice from our speakers tonight. I know they all come from Worksworth, but I have to say, and to Worksworth credit, they do take a lot of interest in what goes on in the lecture, and I think it's sometimes a pity that we don't actually see that in other places. Not that it doesn't happen, I'm sure it does, but not quite in the vocal and constructive, and I emphasise constructive way that the message comes over from Worksworth, and all credit to them for that. So I won't sound happy to move to the recommendations. I don't think this is a happy moment. It's a moment of reflection and sadness, but it's a moment of inevitability, in my opinion. We are to make a decision that other councils before us have already made successfully, and I'm sure the way that local government finance is going, others will be obliged to do the same. So I don't regard it as losing a service. I think it's an opportunity for us and for whoever is eventually the successful tenderer, which is quite a long way away, yet there's a lot of work to be done. So I will move the officer's recommendation, but and I think it would be appropriate, having had a word with Councilor Wilde, that the final specification is also endorsed by the council itself, so everybody has a say in that. And I hope that we can amend that resolution 5 to say that it would pass through the Community Environment Committee, but would be endorsed by the full council, so that everybody is involved. That's the point I'm stressing here. That I think is very important indeed. So, and finally, Chairman, it would be remiss of me not to say a big thank you to Ash and the whole of the officer team and Ash's colleagues and all the people behind the scenes who have done a hell of a lot of work on this, and to our friends. I know they've been paid, but I think they've done a fair job from the consultants, and the session we had earlier was extremely useful, and it's certainly nice to see a consultant that answers questions fairly straight and in an honest and helpful manner, and well done to them, and I hope they'll continue to give us a helping hand in the future. So I will move the recommendation, Chairman, on that basis with a slight amendment that the specification is finally approved by the full council.
Do I have someone to second Councillor Rose's recommendation? Proposal? Councillor Wilde, second. Do you want to? Would you like to say something?
I know there were a number of people before me, so I'll come back.
Councillor Minrath.
Right, thank you, Chair. Since this leisure services review was announced, I've been fighting something about a rear guard action, I know. But like Councillor Rose, I do congratulate Ash for now arrived at this point with this particular set of recommendations. I congratulate him too for having sustained the many critical comments that I've been prone to voicing. But as colleagues along this side of the floor will know, my political antennae vibrates at any notion of privatisation. But that said, I want to make some other comments that will generally set out, I hope, why I am in support of us accepting option A. I want to start by being slightly parochial, if you like, which sets out the reasons in the main why I don't think we should have any truck with options B and C. I'm very pleased that Wirksworth is now being shown the same consideration and fair treatment as Ashbourne and Matlock. because for too long there has been a perception in my community that our particular leisure centre was the poor relation and receiving less attention and investment than its other district counterparts. Secondly, there was always a very strong moral case to be heard against what was called option 5 in the previous report that we considered. Amongst the issues already mentioned, this council had given over the running of the Worksworth Learner Pool, and many of the local parks and recreational spaces, I have to say, in my district, my community, have been secured only through local effort. But I accept that this recommendation of option A is on a much more equitable and balanced grounds than that previously put before us, and therefore deserving of our consideration. I have to say, though, again, as I indicated recently at the full council when we looked at our medium-term financial strategy, there is a creeping sense that we are being dictated to by central government and its funding cuts. We're having to see the outcome of what we do very much in terms of the pound rather than the healthy and active benefits that would accrue from investment by ourselves. This bleak outlook, as I say, seems to be pervading all council services. We're losing our way, but it's not our fault. The blind is being pulled down over our eyes, causing us to stumble and lose direction because of the cuts to local authorities that have come our way. We have to save, as Ash has said, a further 1.2 million over the next few years. We spend something like £740,000 a year on leisure, which, as Councillor Rose has indicated, is a non-statutory service. But this option, option A, will go some way to balancing our books. We are, as Councillor Rose, I know, has often said, we are where we are. In financial terms, this recommendation to outsource all leisure centres whilst retaining sports development in-house makes financial sense. The detail of the tender specification, however, and the final agreement will be paramount, and I'm pleased that this will be subject to scrutiny and consultation. Worksworth Leisure Centre is unique and must receive particular consideration in the drawing up of that specification. As indicated in the report, the centre was established through a joint community sports initiative with a minimum 21-year guarantee for community access. There is a joint use agreement which adds additional protection for the community. It remains one of the largest multi-sports hubs in the district, with grass and artificial pitches, a unique climbing wall of distinction, a learner pool and health centre close by. It's an integrated provision facility. There are leasing agreements too that have to be acknowledged with the Anthony Gell Foundation, an endowed charity that owns the site. Generally, again, we also have to be certain that concessionary pricing, protected programming and minimum hours are all properly accounted for. For me, the success of any authority is built not just on economic prosperity within its communities, but by the health and well-being of the residents who live there. It can be argued that we have a social responsibility, if not a statutory duty, to provide recreation and leisure. I felt we were in danger of fragmentation and decline, and particularly that would have been accelerated had we gone down the option B, C or option 5 route. I'm putting my faith in option A before us this evening, that it will resolve the difficulties and bring us to a little brighter financial future, and I hope too it will protect the health and well-being of all the residents who live within distance of those 4 health centres.
Thank you very much, Councillor Radcliffe. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, I'd like just to commend the officers that have been involved in this report. Very self-explanatory, very easy reading. And also to the people involved in the presentation before the meeting. I think that was very assured. I just hope the predictions are as assuring and that we get the right result at the end of the day. Like Councillor Ratcliffe, this does not sit well with me. I don't like transferring responsibilities to private organisations or public privatisations. But, you know, we have to realise that we do live in a time of still we've got austerity. We have to make savings. There's no way about that. And that means balancing the council's budgets. And we've talked about difficult decisions over the recent weeks. But whether you're in local government or private business or even at home, you cannot continue to spend over the income that you get in. And that's a big... We talk about leisure facilities, and we've seen in the report how costs have escalated over the years. That has does have a direct influence on fees, and we've got to bear that in mind. But people are right when they say we've got to look at the type of facility, and I think somebody mentioned about increasing the numbers and how we go about that. And I don't want to bore you with my holiday information, but I've just come back and a local council have run a sports facility. It's got 4 pools. 1 covered in for toddlers, 1 splash play park, 1 full-size leisure pool, and another Olympic pool only for training for the Olympics. And that is all done with excellent facilities on site. That's done for just £1 admission. And it works because every afternoon, every morning, that facility is full. So therefore it can be done. Somebody said, why can't councils actually make that pay? And they can, with the right facilities. So, I mean, we've had four or five speakers tonight, but although they've spoke on Wirksworth, you can get the drift, because what they say in tonight's speaking, you can equate that to the Derbyshire Dales as a whole. We've talked about the consultation period. That has to be a meaningful consultation period. It has to be to the benefit of the community of Derbyshire Dales, whatever we do. And I didn't really ask a question tonight because there are pages and pages of questions. But I do realise that this leisure review, although it's in its final report, is now the first step to actually going further and taking this into contract stages and all the rest. And when we get to those latter stages, whatever we've been told tonight can change. So we've got to be aware of that. there are lots and lots of issues where we do need assurances, we do need clarity, we do need to have to think about the health and well-being of our residents, and we do have to really notice, you know, the fees, so that we don't deter people from going there. I also again refer to Councillor Ratcliffe when on option 5, and I'm glad that's been amended, because no way that I want to think that this council is turning into a rubber stamping machine, Ash. But there again, even if that did go, I'd be confident that at the end of the day, the latter stages of the process and the contracts would come back to this council. We would have full involvement, and hopefully we will make the recommendations, the right recommendations. Chair, I said this doesn't sit well with me, but I realise the complications, the ramifications of this, so therefore I shall be supporting the motion laid on the table.
Thank you very much. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Ashley and his team for a splendid report, but I would like to congratulate the speakers and thank them for their contribution to this meeting tonight. I think the speakers have been excellent and brought many, many good points to this meeting tonight. Many of the speakers are community workers in sport, and I'd like to congratulate them for all their effort they do for all the community I've worked with. So thank you very much. In regard to the report, I do support option A. It's like Councillor Rose, I'm disappointed that we can't run these facilities ourselves, but local government has, or whatever party, we've been suffering for many years now with continuously cuts in government grants, and in a few years' time there'll be no government grants, it'll all be gone, and we, you know, worse is yet to come really. So I'm pleased we've got this, I hope we get this through all right tonight, and I'm very pleased that this option has been worked out by Ash and his team and the consultants. So I think it's a far, far better option than any of the other options. I think all the centres should be kept together so they can support one another, like it's been raised. If you're using this climbing wall in Wordsworth, you could use other facilities in other parts of the district, and it's all under one company. Same as I've said before, I would like to see a non-for-profit making company running it, because that's what sport should be. It shouldn't be making money on it. It should be for non-for-profit. So yes, I support this, and I won't go on too long, Chair, because I other speakers, but I'm very pleased to support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got 3 speakers down to speak. Can I call on Councillor Sue Burfoot?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I also would like to thank Ash and his team, and indeed the consultants who spoke to us early. All my political instincts are against privatisation, and it won't be a surprise to people around this table that I do feel that we are being forced into this action by a government which, as you can probably imagine, I don't support. But, and as Councillor Flitter said, this decision doesn't sit well with me, but we are where we are, and I will be supporting it, option A. In the end, I do trust the officers and this working group. I hope my trust is justified, that the specification will be a good one, and that the outcome for everyone will be not only a good outcome, but also fair to everyone. And in that, I include not only the service users, but also the leisure staff, whether they're there at the leisure centres themselves or...
To Councillor Fletcher and my right here, I think his holiday was in Australia. For a pound. Anyway, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as the only member here from Ashbourne this evening, I will be supporting option A. I think it's the only option. And again, I would like to thank Ashley on behalf of the people of Ashbourne and my area for all the hard work and he and his team have put into it. And I'll be happy to support option A because I think it's the only option we've got left. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilde.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not a member for Worksworth, but I do sit on the Worksworth community group, and I can say wholeheartedly that they are a passionate group of users from that facility. So, and I've witnessed that many times. So, I mean, I'm pleased to support this. I think that there's an opportunity actually for our residents to get and to benefit from more a more diverse range of services really that a different operator might be able to offer. And I'm also pleased that we're able to keep all 4 of the facilities under one umbrella. So I'm more than happy to second this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rose. Anything more to add? So, yeah.
And in the report.
Thank you. All those in favour of the recommendation?
It's unanimous, Chair.
Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. That ends the agenda for tonight. Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you very much to members of the public and speakers who spoke so well, and have a safe journey back. Thank you.